General Hospital spoilers reveal that the departure of Sofia Mattsson, who portrayed Sasha Gilmore Corbin on General Hospital, in July has sent shockwaves through the show's narrative landscape. Dismantling one of its most emotionally resonant storylines and introducing a new wave of control, disruption, and psychological unease that now hangs heavily over Port Charles. While her exit may appear to some as merely another character arc coming to an end, those who have followed Sasha's harrowing journey recognize that her departure signifies something far more destabilizing, a symbolic fracture within the emotional architecture of the series. Sasha wasn't just a secondary player or a convenient romantic interest. She embodied pain, resilience, and redemption. Her narrative stood as a powerful metaphor for survival against trauma, addiction, grief, and betrayal. From the tragic loss of her child to the dark descent into substance abuse and her tumultuous efforts at recovery, Sasha's arc carried a raw authenticity that few characters have achieved in recent years. Sofia Mattsson delivered each twist and turn with depth, subtlety, and grace, breathing life into a character who was at once vulnerable and ferociously determined. To remove her now, just when viewers were finally witnessing a fragile sense of peace settling over Sasha, is not simply abrupt, it is narratively traumatic. What makes this exit even more jarring is the timing. Sasha had only just begun to rebuild her sense of identity, exploring a newfound connection with Michael Corinthos, preparing to establish a quiet life in France with Daisy, and forging a delicate relationship with her father, Robert Scorpio. These storylines, all rich with potential, now feel violently severed, left dangling without closure or emotional justice. The decision to send Sasha away with Jason Morgan to France, though seemingly serene on the surface, was riddled with unresolved trauma and hidden meaning. The viewers are left to question whether this was truly the natural endpoint for her or a forced narrative erasure brought about by uncontrollable shifts behind the scenes. And herein lies the deeper concern, a new pattern of narrative control that feels artificial and disjointed, manipulating character exits without honoring the emotional threads they wove through the show. Sasha's departure doesn't just affect her storyline. It reverberates across the entire canvas of General Hospital. It alters Michael's arc, dismantles the emotional momentum that had been building between them, and disrupts the balance of characters like Willow, Nina, and even Robert. Daisy, too, becomes an unanchored symbol of lost potential. A child whose relationship with Sasha could have been a long-term emotional anchor. This kind of disruption introduces an undercurrent of chaos that fans are beginning to recognize, a form of creative control that doesn't just pivot the plot but fractures it. In the absence of Sasha, there is no seamless narrative transition. Her absence becomes a gaping void, a psychological trigger that suggests something darker brewing beneath the surface of Port Charles. Characters who had begun to find grounding through Sasha's presence, be it as a friend, a lover, or a mother figure, are now adrift. And that narrative dislocation is palpable in every frame that follows her exit. It feels as though her removal has unlocked something unstable, something bordering on obsessive manipulation, where characters no longer evolve organically but are reshuffled to fit invisible mandates. For fans, this isn't merely disappointing, it's disturbing. What made Sasha compelling was that she mirrored so many real-life struggles, mental health crises, recovery setbacks, the isolation of grief. To abandon that journey midstream is to send a message that healing doesn't matter unless it serves a convenient climax. Sofia Mattsson's portrayal was never performative, it was lived in, intimate, and deeply empathetic. Her quiet strength gave General Hospital a moral center amidst the chaos, and to watch that center vanish without ceremony is to feel unmoored. Now, whispers of creative restructuring and behind-the-scenes shifts are growing louder, and the Sasha storyline seems to be the first visible casualty. In her wake, we are seeing signs of rushed rewrites, disconnected character decisions, and emotional beats that no longer land with the same resonance. This isn't just the loss of a character. It's the unraveling of a carefully woven emotional thread that bound multiple arcs together. And the unease it introduces goes beyond storytelling, it touches the viewers directly, evoking a subconscious anxiety that the heart of General Hospital is being controlled not by narrative truth, but by forces prioritizing convenience, ratings, or off-screen logistics. The obsession now is not with character growth, but with narrative power, who gets to stay, who is erased, and how abruptly it all happens. That sense of control, of surgical storytelling that ignores emotional authenticity, is perhaps the most haunting development of all. For many longtime fans, Sasha was more than a character, she was a mirror. A representation of vulnerability and resilience. Her absence now haunts every scene she once graced, and unless her departure is given the depth and reflection it deserves, the entire world of Port Charles may begin to feel like a place built on emotional amnesia, a place where pain is quickly erased, not healed. And that is the real tragedy unfolding beneath Sofia Mattsson's exit, the destruction of narrative continuity, the loss of emotional logic, and the rise of a new form of storytelling control that threatens to strip General Hospital of its very soul. The unfolding revelation that Sofia Mattsson will return to General Hospital around Christmas has reawakened a storm of emotion and speculation across the fandom. Not just because of the actress's iconic portrayal of Sasha Gilmore, but because her comeback signifies a deep and transformative narrative correction, one that aims to restore balance to a storyline that had been spiraling into disarray since her abrupt departure in July. When Mattsson quietly exited the canvas, the absence of Sasha sent shockwaves through Port Charles and fractured numerous relationships. Not the least of which was the poignant and unfinished connection between Sasha and Michael Corinthos. But now, with confirmation that she's not only returning but openly embracing the idea of rekindling Sasha's romance with Michael, General Hospital is preparing to shift once again, this time not into chaos, but into long overdue emotional resolution and structural healing. Sasha's return around the Christmas season is not arbitrary. It is layered with symbolic weight. Christmas in Port Charles is historically a time of redemption, reunion, and rekindled hope. For Sasha to re-emerge during this sacred period suggests more than a nostalgic cameo. It's the beginning of a recalibrated storyline, one shaped around emotional restitution, character growth, and a decisive move away from the narrative dissonance that followed her departure. This change marks one of the strongest adjustments to the storytelling structure in recent memory. And it signals a shift back toward continuity and emotional depth rather than plot convenience and character disposal. One cannot overstate how much Sasha's reappearance could impact the dynamic between Michael and Daisy. The loss of Sasha had left Michael emotionally rudderless, caught between his responsibilities and his lingering guilt. Meanwhile, Daisy, the child caught in the middle of so many adult deceptions and traumas, had become an orphan presence, mentioned, referenced, but never anchored to a future. Now, with Sasha returning, Daisy's role is poised to transform from a footnote into a focal point. The long-forgotten thread of maternal love and protection, frayed since Sasha's exit, is being rewoven with renewed intensity. Sasha's maternal instincts, once buried under grief and addiction, can now be rediscovered and redirected toward building something real, tangible, and transformative for Daisy. This isn't just about restoring romance between Sasha and Michael, it's about re-establishing a family structure. The emotional foundation that had been crumbling since the layered tragedies of past years. The adjustment that's taking place is monumental. It's not just a plot twist. It's a structural resurrection. For months, fans watched as the show explored trauma, addiction, and loss through Sasha's lens, only to have her removed at the precipice of resolution. The pain felt by viewers was real, not because a character left, but because her journey was robbed of closure. Now, General Hospital appears to be admitting that misstep and rewriting the course. The idea of Sasha returning with strength and stability, no longer the victim, but the healer, has the potential to reshape the entire tone of Port Charles. It puts pressure on characters like Michael, Willow, and Nina to confront their truths. It reintroduces tension with the Quartermaines, especially if Sasha's presence threatens the order Michael has tried to maintain in Sasha's absence. It forces questions about motherhood, forgiveness, trust, and whether people truly deserve second chances. And most importantly, it puts Daisy in the center of a new, emotionally explosive storyline where she is no longer a passive element but a catalyst for healing or conflict. This adjustment, as quiet as it may seem now, is a tectonic shift in the emotional topography of the show. It challenges the writers to follow through on threads they once abandoned. It challenges the characters to look inward and reconcile with the ghosts of their past decisions. And it challenges the viewers to prepare for a version of Sasha who is no longer broken. No longer passive, but fully awakened, with purpose, with clarity, and with the strength to reclaim what was once taken from her. There's also something particularly powerful in Sofia Mattson's own words when she announced her potential return. She didn't hedge, didn't distance herself from the character, on the contrary. She embraced the possibility of rebuilding Sasha's connection with Michael, calling their chemistry with Rory Gibson, something the fans responded to deeply. Her willingness to return is not just a contractual note, it's a creative vote of confidence in the story that she helped shape and the one she hopes to help finish. Beyond the emotional weight, there is an unmistakable undercurrent of creative control being reasserted, a recalibration by the writers to fix what had been broken. The impulse to send Sasha away may have stemmed from logistical concerns, but the damage it caused was profound. Now, by orchestrating her return, the show is not only adjusting the arc, it's restoring dignity to a character who had become emblematic of resilience. Her new chapter won't just be a continuation, it will be a reinvention. One grounded in hope and the belief that trauma does not define a person's end. Daisy's future, once bleak and uncertain, now seems poised to explode with emotional possibility. With Sasha's return, Daisy may finally experience the kind of maternal connection that has long eluded her. Rather than being the silent reminder of loss, Daisy can become the center of a narrative about growth, belonging, and redemption. And as Michael finds himself drawn back into Sasha's orbit, the tension between past pain and present opportunity will become the emotional core of a revived love story. Ultimately, Sofia Mattson's comeback is far more than a seasonal gesture. It's a reset, a reawakening, and a quiet revolution in how General Hospital treats emotional continuity. It affirms that some stories are too vital to discard and that healing, no matter how delayed, is always worth writing toward. The adjustment has begun. And this time, it may finally lead to peace, purpose, and profound transformation, for Sasha, for Michael, for Daisy, and for a show that is finally remembering what it means to honor the humanity at the heart of its characters. Sasha Gilmore's world is no longer defined by quiet resilience or fragile recovery. The woman who once mourned, broke, and rebuilt herself piece by piece is gone, burned away in the flames of betrayal, grief, and deception. In her place now stands something far more volatile, far more dangerous, and far more commanding. The events surrounding Willow's wedding, an occasion that was supposed to mark joy and closure, have instead cracked open a festering truth beneath Port Charles's carefully curated calm. Willow, once held up as a paragon of virtue, has spiraled into a psychological abyss, her need for control unraveling in real time. But it's not just her own world she's imploding, she's dragging Sasha down with her, and in doing so, she's igniting a war that no one could have predicted. What viewers once saw as a rivalry simmering under the surface has erupted into open hostility. Willow's descent into obsession, her growing paranoia, and her irrational hatred of Sasha have transformed the entire dynamic of the show. Once allies bound by shared trauma, Sasha and Willow are now poised on opposite ends of a devastating emotional battlefield. And it all began with the illusion of a perfect marriage, a staged ceremony riddled with secrets, half-truths, and hidden motives. Willow didn't just marry Drew for love, she did it to solidify her dominance, to erase Sasha from Michael's heart once and for all. To re-establish her reign as the unchallenged matriarch of Michael's world. But she underestimated Sasha's strength, and her will to protect. As Willow's behavior grows more erratic in the aftermath of the wedding, she becomes obsessed with eliminating anything she sees as a threat to her position, and Sasha becomes her primary target. Fueled by unresolved jealousy and a deep psychological fracture, Willow begins to believe that Sasha is a danger, not just to her marriage, but to her very identity as a mother and wife. She begins spreading whispers, manipulating perceptions, and orchestrating situations designed to isolate Sasha further from Michael, from Daisy, and from the rest of Port Charles. It's a slow-burning campaign of erasure. But as with any campaign of control, there is always a tipping point. That point comes when rumors begin to circulate of Sasha's sudden disappearance, of her apparent death under mysterious circumstances. The town is stunned, heartbroken, and suspicious. Some believe it was suicide. Others think it was an accident. But the truth is far darker. Sasha's death is not the end, it's the beginning of a calculated transformation. Faking her demise becomes her only means of escape, the only way to shed the helplessness imposed upon her and return not as the broken widow, not as the forgotten addict, but as an unstoppable force driven by one singular truth: vengeance. Her return, cloaked in secrecy and precision, is the most powerful narrative adjustment Port Charles has witnessed in years. Sasha doesn't return to beg forgiveness or seek redemption. She returns to expose Willow, to destroy the carefully woven lies, to reclaim Daisy, and to warn anyone who tries to stand in her way that she is no longer afraid to burn down whatever illusions they're hiding behind. With every step she takes, she dismantles the version of events Willow tried to create. She shows the town that the real madness never belonged to her, it has always lived within Willow, festering, calculating, waiting to strike. And now it has. But Sasha isn't only fighting for herself. She's fighting for Daisy, for the right to be the mother figure she was nearly robbed of being. She's fighting for Michael, not out of romance, but out of the need to shake him from the dream world he's been manipulated into living. And she's fighting for the other children Michael has raised and protected, because if Willow is willing to turn her wrath on Sasha, then it's only a matter of time before she turns that same instability on them. Sasha's war isn't just personal, it's generational. It's maternal. It's primal. Each move Sasha makes upon her return is precise, almost surgical. She gathers evidence, exposes manipulation, calls out medical fraud, and slowly corners Willow into an inescapable truth. The town begins to see what they ignored for so long: the woman they trusted, the one they praised for her strength, is actually coming apart at the seams. Willow's mask begins to slip. And beneath it lies a calculating force that has rewritten history, gaslighted everyone around her, and plotted the destruction of the very people who once loved her. But Sasha is not interested in justice through legal means. She wants truth, raw and unfiltered. She wants Port Charles to see Willow's madness in the same way she once saw her own. Not hidden under medication or sweet smiles, but laid bare for all to witness. The lines between hero and villain begin to blur. Sasha, once known for her compassion, now wields emotional warfare like a weapon. Willow, once seen as selfless, becomes a warning of what happens when grief and control morph into obsession. Through it all, Sasha's bond with Daisy grows into something unbreakable. For Daisy, Sasha is not just a protector, she is a symbol of rebirth. And in protecting Daisy, Sasha redeems the years she lost to pain. No longer a shadow in someone else's narrative, Sasha takes back the pen and begins writing her own story, a story not of survival, but of domination. Every time Willow tries to reassert control, Sasha is one step ahead. She knows every tactic, every mask, because she's worn them herself. And she has no intention of letting them define her again. By the time the town realizes Sasha is back, and alive, the damage is done. Willow has been exposed, her marriage has fractured, and her reputation lies in ruins. Yet the final twist remains. Sasha doesn't want Michael back. She doesn't need the man who wavered in her darkest hour. She has Daisy. She has clarity. And she has something even more powerful than love, she has purpose. The transformation of Sasha Gilmore is now complete. What began as a campaign of survival has become a mission of reckoning. And the woman who once begged to be understood now demands to be feared. Her madness is not chaos, it is clarity. Her rage is not wild, it is focused. And her vengeance is not cruel, it is earned. Port Charles will never be the same again. And neither will Willow. Because when Sasha returns, she doesn't just rewrite the story, she ends it on her terms. The revelation that Sasha and Robert are set to leave Port Charles has cast a deep shadow over the emotional equilibrium of General Hospital, disrupting carefully built relationships, silencing long-running undercurrents of loyalty and healing, and opening the door for a new, far more unsettling chapter centered around the unexpected and intensely symbolic return of Holly. While Sasha's exit may appear, on the surface, to be the continuation of a healing journey, a woman taking time away to gather herself, to care for Daisy, to finally live a life free of the daily reminders of trauma, the reality is much murkier. The timing of her disappearance, especially in concert with Robert's withdrawal from his long-standing post of justice and order, suggests something far more complicated than mere rest. Their departures are not isolated acts. They are part of a pattern, a carefully timed removal of stabilizing forces from a town that is increasingly falling under the weight of its own secrets. Sasha was never just a survivor. She was the emotional core of many intersecting lives, a symbol of perseverance through grief, addiction, betrayal, and collapse. Her absence creates a vacuum, a hollow space that resonates through Michael, Daisy, Willow, and even the Quartermain family, sending ripples of discomfort that no one dares acknowledge aloud. But it is Robert's departure that sends a signal too loud to ignore, a signal that awakens Holly. Holly does not return to Port Charles out of longing or nostalgia. She returns because something feels wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. She senses it in the way no one is talking about Sasha's sudden retreat, in the way Robert left with barely a word of explanation, in the way people shift their eyes when Daisy's name is spoken. Holly has always been attuned to the silences between conversations, the gaps in truth that others overlook. And as she steps back into the world she once called home, she feels the chill of something hidden, something dangerous pulsing just beneath the surface. This isn't just the echo of old love calling her back, it's the shadow of a reckoning. As she moves through the halls of General Hospital, as she revisits old allies and stares down former rivals, she sees that the foundation of the hospital, and the town itself, is cracked. What once felt like a city built on truth, justice, and redemption is now held together by denial, secrecy, and fear. Sasha's disappearance becomes more than an emotional wound, it becomes an obsession for Holly. She begins retracing steps, conversations, decisions, asking herself why a woman who had just begun to find peace would vanish so suddenly, why Robert would choose to walk away just as so many forces threatened to erupt. The more she digs, the more she realizes this is not a coincidence. Robert was hiding something. Not from Holly, perhaps, but from himself. The burden of guilt in his final weeks was unmistakable. The way his eyes darkened whenever Sasha or Daisy was mentioned, the way he avoided conversations about the future as though he knew he would not be part of it. Holly starts to believe that something happened, something that forced Robert to choose exile over confrontation, something involving Sasha, Daisy, and possibly even Michael. Her mind begins to churn through possibilities. Was there a threat? A cover-up? Did Robert discover something he wasn't supposed to know? As the holiday season creeps in and Port Charles begins to dress itself in the illusion of joy and light, Holly digs deeper, quietly unraveling the truth one conversation, one document, one hidden thread at a time. And the further she delves, the more she feels it. This is not just the story of two people walking away. It is the story of control, manipulation, and emotional warfare. Sasha's departure was not healing, it was containment. Her voice, her memories, her truth had become too dangerous, too raw. Someone wanted her silenced, and Robert, torn between duty and loyalty, may have been forced to comply. Holly realizes that Daisy may not be safe, that Michael may not be aware of how deeply entangled he is in the narrative of Sasha's undoing, and that Willow, still spiraling in the aftermath of her own wedding's implosion, may have had more influence in Sasha's removal than anyone dares admit. What began as confusion grows into obsession. Holly cannot sleep, cannot rest, cannot turn her mind away from the invisible thread connecting Sasha's disappearance to the unraveling of Robert's moral code. Every moment becomes a clue. Every silence a scream. She revisits old case files, encrypted messages, conversations in shadowed corridors, slowly reconstructing the timeline of Sasha's final days in Port Charles. She discovers patterns: visits to the hospital with no medical documentation, conversations between Willow and Drew that abruptly ended, missing footage from security archives. Gaps in Daisy's care schedule. All of it pointing to one thing: Sasha did not leave of her own accord. She was guided out, managed, controlled. Robert may have been the escort, but someone else held the leash. Holly becomes the lone voice in the void, screaming into the quiet that Sasha is not resting. She is hiding, surviving, perhaps barely holding on. And Robert is not retired, he is running, fleeing a truth he couldn't bear to carry. The obsession transforms Holly from visitor to crusader. She is no longer here to reconnect. She is here to expose. To fight. To make those who pushed Sasha into the dark face the consequences of what they've done. But even as she inches closer to the truth, she begins to feel its weight. The more she uncovers, the more she realizes how deep the rot goes. This isn't just about Sasha or Robert. It's about control. It's about a system of power within Port Charles that knows how to erase people not with death, but with silence. And that realization terrifies her. Still, Holly presses on. She begins reaching out to those she once trusted, planting seeds of doubt, gathering allies. Building a case not just of evidence but of moral outrage. She speaks Daisy's name with reverence and urgency, reminding those around her that the girl's safety is not assured. That the absence of Sasha is not peace, it is a wound. And as the days grow colder and the nights longer, she prepares herself for the storm she is about to unleash. Because once the truth is spoken, there will be no return. Port Charles will have to reckon with the reality that its heroes abandoned a woman in need, that its silence enabled trauma. That its structure is no longer one of protection, but of careful control. Sasha and Robert may be gone, but Holly remains. And her presence is no longer gentle. It is thunder before the lightning. Truth before the reckoning. She carries their memory not as nostalgia, but as proof of failure. And she will not rest until the city faces what it has done. The obsession now belongs to her. The story is no longer just about a disappearance, it is about what comes after silence. And Holly is ready to make Port Charles listen.